Hello, I'm going to talk today a little bit about rigging up a car. This is a very low poly DeLorean that I made. And what you can do is the first thing you need to do is separate out all the wheels. I have one mesh here and one texture. So I can either duplicate this several times and just delete all the faces that, if I were to make four copies of this, delete all the faces. That are not a car chassis. I'd have each wheel kind of the long way around on this one. I'm going to come in since I built this. I know that I actually built them out of separate objects, so I combined them. So if I separate them, they actually should up here go into its separate parts. So this is kind of similar to the way that we did the Goblin. That we separated it out into separate parts. Um, but you can, the bottom line is you got to separate out the wheels because they're separate objects. And not only do you got to separate them out, you need to make sure that their pivot point is in the middle of the hubcap. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually delete all the history to get rid of that little tiny bit of business there with the history. And I'm going to now come over to all of these objects and under Modify, Center Pivot, put the middle pivot on each of these wheels. And that's going to allow me to grab 1, 2, 3, 4 wheels and do a real fast rotation check to make sure they're all going in the same direction. And they are. Okay, cool. So the way I want to do this is I want to rig it up with bones, of course. And I'm going to do that after a quick renaming of all of these meshes. So chassis mesh, the chassis mesh. Sounds like a really good wine. So back, driver, wheel, and you can do left, right, it doesn't matter. It's kind of up to you. In fact, that's the front driver wheel, so I'm just going to copy and paste. And this is something where I want people to kind of follow along because this is going to be something where it really does help if you just make sure that you've got everything named, because when you start putting things like expressions in, similar to the fun we've had doing weighting, it just really helps when everything is named correctly. So we have the DeLorean mesh, and in this case now it's actually the DeLorean group. Do a quick save of this. Call this one. Gotta keep them separated. There we go. And let's move in now to to rig this up. What we're going to need in this assignment is you're going to have, oh, let's see, it's not quite on the ground yet. That's fine. Is you're going to want to have a separate bone for the chassis. So when it goes rock, 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 I think that's the body. The chassis is actually the metal bit here at the bottom, but hey, what do we care? You want this to kind of rock back and forth like when it stops. And the wheels, of course, get their own bone system. But remember that on an actual car, you've got the front wheels can turn, but the back wheels don't. They actually belong on the same axle. So these front ones, we're going to have separate bones in them to make these turn, but the back ones are just going to kind of roll straight forward. So those can actually be under the auspice of a singular bone. So the way I'm going to draw these is I'm going to come in here to rigging and go over here to skeleton, create joints, and just create different joints for the wheels. That is immense. So let's go down to 2.5. Okay, there we go. A little more reasonable. Chances are really good this is a Lilliputian car. Hold, please. Let's just size this up because that makes more sense than not. In fact, I'm going to come in here to my settings, make sure that I've got centimeters. Holy Christmas. No wonder this thing's crazy. So I want to make sure that everything is copacetic. 10.11, apply, thank you. I don't think I saved my change. You have foot degrees, 30 frames per second. The animator in me keeps coming out. So there we are, okay, and now we've got this thing sized. Well, yeah, it was a tiny car, wasn't it? It was a little toy car. So now I'm gonna grow this up a little bit, about 7 feet long. Nah, close enough for jazz. And come up here to edit, go to I'm sorry, under Modify, let's freeze transformations, and I've only got scale selected. Why not? There we go. Okay, so now this thing is a little more appropriately sized. Get out of here, joint. We don't need you. So come up here, and I think the reason you're seeing the shading is I've got X-ray on, which actually is going to help in this case, because we can see the whole of the car. And if I show also, oops, sorry, go to wireframe unshaded, I can actually see the construction of the car. That's so beautiful. That when we create joints, I can come in here and hold down V and pop it into the middle of this little wheel here. Now that thing is too bloody tiny. So let me do this. Go up to display, animation, joint size, and just kind of make these things go up a little bit. There we go. So I got one for the front, and I'm not going to make another because I want these all to be separate. So I'm going to come up here and go again to skeleton, create joints, go to the back, hold down V to try and pop it in the middle of that little pie slices. That's the model. It seems to work well. And then for the car, the chassis that I was talking about that sort of rocks back and forth, I'm going to create a separate bone here. I want to make sure that nothing is selected. There we go. Otherwise, it's going to connect those two, and I don't want that. So skeleton, I've got to create a joint here, and I'm going to make it rock from kind of the bottom is where that happens. I was making it look a bit silly earlier by just moving the model. So I've got these, and I want to bring them all together so that I don't want these wheel joints to actually be parented under this one. I want this to move separately from the wheels. That's the actual rocking motion. So really, I kind of want to dictate the way I want to do it, and you can do it another way. I kind of want to dictate this as being sort of the ground for everything. That's the sort of beginning of where all the these bones can go. Can you have this up inside where the chassis actually would be? Sure. I just need to have something that's kind of a world joint at 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to call this car top and is chassis. I'll rename that joint later. And this is back wheels. And the front is going to need not just one, but I'm going to need two of them. So I've got that right there, but I do not want it. I want that to be in the center, actually, of the object, because remember it's going to turn on this, and if it turns in Y and it's out here on the side, it's going to look really weird. It's going to kind of swing wide. So from here, I can come up here to skeleton and mirror joints, and it doesn't work because, take a look here, this is actually not a 0, 0, 0, hey, which is something we might want to do. So this is just a reminder that even though I'm doing this, it may not actually be accurate to what you need. So always check your work. Always check your work. Go up here to modify, freeze. Oh, I don't think freeze. Yeah, I don't have translate on there. So let's do this again. There we go. And take that center and snap it back. Oops. There we go. Okay, so we have a model that's ready to kind of go. Keep moving on this. And the back wheels, just going to move that over here to the center of the model again. Now I should be able to come up here to skeleton and mirror joints, and it does pop to the side, which is pretty cool. Wait, that was the back wheel. What am I doing? I'm going crazy. So, see, I've got back wheels. It's actually okay if the back wheels are from top in the center of this car, because it's gonna, both these wheels are gonna adhere to the forward rolling motion of that car, because this joint, because these wheels actually don't turn. Okay, so yeah, the back wheels are just need one bone, and it's the front wheels that I was looking for. So all of these, of course, can now get the prefix hierarchy name, joint underscore. So I've got pretty much everything I need. And that's the chassis, that's the car top, and that's the front driver wheel. I want to put this in the center of the tire, and then I want to come up here to skeleton and mirror the joints. And this is just passenger. So all these things I'm going to just sort of group really quickly onto the middle car top here. Okay, there we go. So yeah, I'm just going to take all these and put them together, and you'll see the skeletal sections all grow and branch out. So I'm going to take this, just grab it with my middle mouse button and drop it on top of joint car top, joint chassis, joint back wheels, and joint front driver wheel. So it's a pretty simple setup, actually. It's really not complex because it doesn't need to be. I also have the luxury of just coming in here and saying all I need to do is take these and skin them 100% onto my chosen joint. So I've got the chassis mesh, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to control select the joint chassis and come over here to skin, bind the skin, and go to the options. And instead of joint hierarchy, I just want to say selected joints. And instead of maximum influence 2, just 1. Because I just want the whole chassis selected to just that bone, or this bone, that model. And if I do that, I really don't have to go through the rigors of skinning anything, because it's just kind of a 1-to-1 ratio there. So joint front driver wheel, same thing with skinning. I've got the settings that I want. I'm going to come in here and grab each successive joint and just do the same thing with the binding the skin. The back, I'm going to grab both of these and then go to the back wheels. This is where naming things really helps. So now we have the back wheels are all on one bone that make them turn like so. And the front has a bone system that allows you to front driver wheel and front passenger wheel. Not only will these go rolling the same way, but in this case they actually also get to turn. Aha! That's what you get when you mirror a joint. But the good news is that we don't really care, because our controls will be controlling these. Even if I grab them and rotated them in and they kind of did that weird pigeon-toed thing, I can still assign them to a constraint, and I can assign them to a constraint to have the rotation constraint. So and let's test out the chassis as well. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. So here's the one change you may want to consider, which is that these wheels, we actually need something above these wheels, because we are going to be rotating them in Y. And while these are going forward like so, we don't want them actually, we do not want them rotating in another, given another axis of rotation. Because if we turn them in Y and then rotate, that looks fine, but that's not what is actually happening. Look at these numbers up here. They're actually freaking out, all three of them, because it's called gimbal lock. So if I actually come in here and rotate in Z, I guess, it goes weird because I have another rotation value on it. So it's usually you want to keep these things clean so that they are only dealing with one aspect of rotation. And we can cure this in a number of ways. First of all, you can always come in here. I'm just going to organize these so they're a little closer together. And you can come in here and actually, if you wanted to, you can insert a joint under skeleton and insert joints. What you do is you come over here, oops, come over here to the joint, and That is to say, let's do this. Let's turn off the polygons. There we go. So right there, I've inserted a joint right here. It's joint number 1. And over here, same thing. I got another joint there as well. Now, because joint 1 and joint 2 were inserted, we could have done this previously, but it's fine. The ones that the models are affixed to are actually these joints above it. So what we can do is one of two things. We can try to be clever and kind of do the old switcheroo, which I'm going to do. I'm going to take this and see if I can parent it to its child. No? Okay. I could do that. Looks like it might be a pain. So the best thing to do come up here is when you're adding something, come up and let's just unbind the skin. Again, we didn't paint any weights. This is absolutely painless. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, copy and paste, and type in Y rotation. I'm going to do this for both so that I know what's doing what. Oh, sorry. This is Y rotation. The Y rotation is above the actual wheel. Doing the X rotation. So these are our new joints that we've put in, and we don't even need them to actually be in the space that they're in. We can actually raise them up a bit if we want to sort of show that they are only doing Y rotation. It's kind of cool. Look at that car, man. So with that change, we can come up here and just skin again. I don't like joints being on top of each other because it tends to obscure things, and there you go. And you want to make it a little easier for yourself if you can. So now we have joint Y rotation. It's going to make them rotate like so, and the bottom is going to just handle the rotation of the wheels. So your assignment is to rig up your specific car using kind of the same constraint systems we went over in class, and you can use expressions if you'd like for the forward motion of this, and you can use a steering wheel constraint for the top here, but this is a very simple rig for a car that allows you to keep things separate because it helps. Could this have been all one model? Yeah. And you would have maybe painted some weights or grabbed something. That's fine. We've done that with the Goblin. But we made a separate, we made a series of separate polygon models, and we have a complete car system that works just fine. So this sort of shows you the technique you can use for your car. You need to make sure that you've got everything kind of in the middle of the wheels, and that everything works, including your free chassis, or if you have doors or something, have those work as well. So good luck.